Good afternoon, everybody. It's Triumph Biker Man here. I hope everybody's keeping well in the depths of winter here in the United Kingdom. And like my bikes, I am also cabined up while it's blowing a hoolie outside. Anyhow, I thought I would go back into the archives and dig out some footage of a two-night stay in Scotland last year. It was a tea time ride up to Scotland, and I was invited by a work colleague and a friend to try out a little bit of fly fishing. So I thought I'd take them up on that. I'm a big fisherman, do a lot of coarse fishing, and I've done coarse fishing for 40 odd years now. So I've never tried fly fishing before, and was really looking forward to it. And more importantly, was also looking forward to a nice ride out on the 850 Sport. So I hope you enjoy the footage. Just a few details about the actual road trip to Scotland and the trip back down south. So I live in Lincolnshire, and I was staying in a place called West Linton, which is approximately 20 miles down south from Edinburgh. And as it's a tea time ride, I wanted to get to West Linton as direct as possible, really, even though it was a lovely warm summer's day. So the journey is about 245 miles and was scheduled to take just over 4 hours. So the journey started off really getting onto the A1 North, which isn't the most inspiring of roads, and then travelling up to the A66 through the North Pennines, which isn't a bad ride sometimes, and I stopped there for a while just to admire some of the scenery. And then from there, travelling into Scotland on the M6 from Penrith and past Moffat in the Dumfries and Galloway area. And just a quick shout out here to the Buckley Arms in Moffat, which I've stayed at quite a few times now. Biking place, really well run, and some excellent roads around Moffat. And the Three Locks Tour, which I'm sure Dave, the owner, will be more than happy to show you, is a must for any motorbiker looking to see some cracking scenery, with it being in the borders not too far away. And from there, it was dropping onto the A702, which was a really nice ride along the A702 to West Linton, where I stayed at the Gordon Arms for the night, and a great meal had, pint of Guinness, and set me up for the next day's fishing. Now, the journey down south was a completely different scenario. I was in absolutely no rush to get home, so I thought I'd have the opportunity to go into some of the beautiful landscapes that Northern England has got to offer. So I went onto the A7 near Galashiels and traversed the Northumberland National Park and Kielder Forest, which I've been to a few times before. I then stopped at Tynemouth on the northeast coast just for a quick coffee, and then travelled back down south through the North Yorkshire moors and quickly stopped at Helmsley, which is a beautiful part of the country, for a quick ice cream before getting out onto the open road again and getting back into Lincolnshire. Now, this is one of my first YouTube videos, and it's quite new territory to me, as well as using GoPros and talking into mics, etc. So I'm going well outside of my comfort zone with this, and I'm really happy to take on any feedback in regards to how to do things better. Just drop it down into the comments, or if there's anything in particular that you would like me to talk about, again, just drop it into the comments. And the main reason that I've really wanted to do these YouTube videos, or start doing them at least, is to look back in a few years and look at some of the rides that I've been on. And I wouldn't consider myself to be a vastly experienced rider at all, even though I've been riding 13 years now. But I have been on some really fantastic tours, and I sometimes think to myself, I wish I could just replay this bit here in the northwest of Scotland or in the southwest of England, wherever I've been really fortunate to go on some great rides, and that's the main reason. As you get older, you just think to yourself, it'd be nice to be able to just press a couple of buttons and be able to see some of these rides, and also some of the things that you learn while you're riding, because you never stop learning while you're riding. And maybe the moment that you do think you know everything about riding in general, it's probably the time that you become unstuck. So now I've got the necessary GoPros, I've got the mics to go with it. I'm looking to film as many trips as possible. And at this point, I'd just like to give a shout out to That Bloke on a Motorbike. I've been watching his channel for quite a while now, but I was fortunate enough to meet him last year in the Yorkshire Dales. And it was part of my first YouTube video that I did, is when I came across Dave, That Bloke on a Motorbike. Look him up, really knowledgeable guy. And it's safe to say that That Bloke on a Motorbike inspired me to give this YouTube a go. Also got some great videos, really enjoy watching your videos, Dave. And some of the older ones as well, where you give some tuition on motorbiking in general. So thanks a lot for that, mate. And no, it's much appreciated. The other thing that I wanted to take advantage of was to maybe impart some advice on some of the things that I've learned in biking over the last few years. And I would by no means classify myself as a very experienced rider, because I started late on in life. So that is another area that I would like to look at. Made it up to the Gordon Arms for the night in West Linton, and parked the bike up around the side in the car park. Great ride, to be fair, no issues whatsoever. And the weather was very kind to us. And a deserving pint or two of the black stuff, which was also very nice. So this is the reservoir that we fished the next day. Beautiful place, about 5 miles out of West Linton. And here I am getting a bit of tuition off the master himself in regards to how to cast and what it's all about. Very fair to say that it is a lot harder than it looks, I can assure you. Very hard. And just getting the timing right of getting that line out proved to be quite a challenge, particularly for the first hour to two. I'd also like to put an apology out at this precise moment in time for the legs and the feet being shown. It was a boiling hot day, and you needed a little bit of air to go down in the old nether regions. So getting back to the biking side of things, I also plan to do some product reviews of things that I bought over the years for the bikes, some of which have been really great and some of them which have been a complete waste of money. So look out for them in the future. But for this first video in the series, I would just like to pass on my top tips for new riders. And in actual fact, not even new riders, for any riders, things that I've learned over the last 13 years. And as I said, we're always learning as bikers, and it's about putting that learning into practice, which is going to keep you as safe as possible on the road.
When we first moved in about 5-6 years ago, there was once where you had snow from Boxing Day right the way through to February.
Yeah.
Snow right in the house. Well, snow at the garden for like a solid couple of months.
So the first thing that I'd like to mention is that when you do pass your Mod 1 and your Mod 2, really well done. It's not easy. It's a pressurized environment, and anything can happen in a pressurized environment.
Yeah.
I remember mine. I remember taking my driving test. It's difficult, but this is really where your learning starts. Yes, that was a real nip of whiskey, purely for medicinal purposes. I wasn't riding later on that day, so I did fill my boots a bit, really.
Oh, that's nice.
My next tip is to buy the best protective gear that you can afford, whether that be boots, helmet, jackets, jeans, pants, etc., etc., it really is worth the investment. Good quality protection doesn't come cheap, so you need to really factor this into the price of taking the test, buying the motorbike, insurance, tax, etc., etc. However, I would actually put this up as so important that you can't walk by this and do it on the cheap. I remember a scenario when I went for the first time to the Triumph dealership. Having looked at a bike, I thought, I think I'll probably buy that. And then looking at the different bits of protective gear that was needed to actually ride this thing on the road, and picking up a helmet, which was a premium helmet at the time. And he must have seen my eyes and ears twitching a little bit with the price. All of the helmets were quite, in my mind, quite expensive. All of them were a few £100, and I was stood there just scratching my head a little bit, and I asked him, I said, can you get cheaper on the open market? And he said, yeah, well, obviously you can get a lot cheaper, but what price do you put on your head? Now, obviously he was a little bit extreme when he said that, but it did ring true. And from that moment on, I just really wanted to buy the best quality that I could afford. It's like any insurance policy, really. We always pay insurance for our house. We have life insurance, critical illness insurance, you name it. We tend to take this insurance. And we really hope that we won't need this insurance, but just in case, and that's what it's all about, just in case the worst was to happen, that we've done everything in our power to limit any damage, really. We are open to the elements as motorbike riders, so I would really recommend buying the best gear that you can afford, and please don't skimp. That was a nice bit of breakfast, that, on the way back down south in the morning. Yeah, really good. The next thing is buying a bike that you're actually comfortable with, that's not too heavy. And I'll give you a little scenario about what happened when I was looking for my first bike now. I'll tell you about a scenario I had when I first passed my test and was eager to purchase my first bike. I went to visit a very popular dealership on the East Coast that primarily dealt with Japanese bikes, and arrived at the dealership and started to have a look around at the bikes. It was an absolute goldmine for bikes, and there were hundreds of these things lined up. And one in particular caught my eye, which was a Kawasaki Z750. It was in white, and I thought it looked great. It was full of carbon, looked the bee's knees, and looked at the price, didn't think anything more of it, and went to the salesman and thought we'd negotiate and try and secure it. Just before buying the bike, I asked the salesman if I could just take it for a ride around the block, or even, it didn't even have to be on the roads actually, it could be around the back of where the showroom was, just to get a feel of the bike and just to see what the weight was like and the riding position and just the usual type of thing, to see if it was something that I really wanted. And at that point, the salesman put a stop to it and said, look, we won't allow you to ride this thing on the road. We don't even think that would allow you to take it around the back. At this point, even as an inexperienced rider, I started to hear a few alarm bells. I actually said to the salesman, I said, look, I'm not buying a loaf of bread here or a pint of milk from the local shop. This is something that is a chunk of money and is something that I really need to gel with and feel comfortable in buying. So the purchase wasn't made in the end. I think we were both a little bit frustrated, but I did say that unless I could actually ride it, even if it was for 10 yards, I wasn't going to buy this thing. So I went home, had a little think, and then I spoke to a friend of mine who was very experienced in bikes. And the first thing he said to me was, why are you going for a 700 or a 750? he said that if I was you, I would go for something a lot lighter than a Z750. And he actually mentioned going and having a look at a Street Triple or a Street Triple R, which were getting quite a few highlights at the time in various magazines for being very responsive, being light, being easy to ride, and being really forgiving. And not to be put off with the fact that it was a 675 as opposed to some of the bigger bikes. So I did a little bit of research. I actually found one not too far from my house, which was one of the last Street Triple R with the underslung exhaust, the 2012 models. And I went to visit. I think this was the next day actually. The dealership were ever so helpful. They let me sit on the bike, showed the license, and they let me take it up and down the road. And it was sold. I didn't think twice. I still have that bike now, and I've toured all over the UK for over 10 years in that bike. And I can honestly say that that 675cc engine is more than enough power than I would ever need. Bearing in mind that a 125cc can get you over 100 miles an hour if that's what you want, don't feel as though you need a big powerful bike, particularly for your first bike. I toured on this 675 Street Triple R for many years, and I managed to get my confidence and cut my teeth in motorcycling on this particular bike, but don't feel the need to go straight to a really heavy, really powerful bike. My next tip is to use all of the controls as smoothly as you can. So front brake, rear brake, throttle, clutch, everything as smooth as you can do. And needless to say, never brake when you're going around a corner. So never brake when you go around a corner, which brings me on to my next tip, which is learn to counter steer. Counter steering videos are available in their hundreds on YouTube, and I can't recommend counter steering or learning to counter steer enough, particularly when you're a new rider. Just seen some nice roads I've been going through in Northumberland on my way down to Tynemouth. Yeah, that was a lovely stretch and some great roads. So my next tip is to always ride within your limits. Now that's easier said than done, particularly when you are riding in groups, and you always get a few people that want to be the hero and want to pull the throttle back and be the first one to arrive at a destination. Now that's fine. If that's the case, just let them go and just ride safely, ride at your own speed, and just take in the surroundings. I've never been a fast rider. I prefer to take my time. I like to look at the scenery and just enjoy the journey. I have seen egos ending up in a ditch. Please don't be one of them. These pictures were taken at Tynemouth on the east coast, northeast coast, which bring back happy memories for myself and my family for reasons various. Anyway, we continue the trip down south. The next and one of the most important things is look where you want the bike to go. In essence, the bike will follow wherever you are looking. So in a corner, for example, you look at the turn's exit, and that's your target really. You hold the throttle steady and you roll off smoothly. You focus your head and eyes where you want to go, which is the exit. Now there are loads of videos on YouTube in regards to where to position yourself in a corner, and I won't be going through that with you today. Funnily enough, that bloke on a motorbike, Dave, has an excellent video on where to position yourself in regards to turning. But the general rule of thumb is just look at where you want to go when you are riding a motorbike. My next tip is to make sure that you are constantly looking in your mirrors and knowing what's happening around you. I'm still in the habit now of doing plenty of what they call lifesaver moves and looking over your shoulders as well as looking in your mirrors, looking for any blind spots. But it's just road awareness and making sure that you are in a position to do anything at a moment's notice if needed. And an obvious one, make sure that the mirrors are adjusted as well as possible to give you a firm view of what's behind you. That was a nice stop in the North York Moors. Loads of bikes out, and it's always nice to speak to other people in the biking community. We've always got time for a natter. Now the next thing is just a very basic maintenance of a motorbike, and that is just giving it a visual inspection before each ride to make sure that the chain is nice and lubed, the tyres are pumped, the oil levels are fine. So this isn't complicated stuff, and believe you me, I wouldn't get involved in anything other than the very basic pieces of maintenance that are required on a bike. Your tyres are your only 2 points of contact with the road, so needless to say, need to be checked on a very regular basis. Not just visually, but also physically. I've actually been out on the road before where I thought that the tyres actually felt fine, but it was only when I was on the road where I could just feel a slight wobble in the front tyre. So I actually pulled into a petrol station just to check the tyres out, and it transpired that the front tyre was about 10 psi out, and that did make a huge difference to the handling of the motorbike. A chain connects your motor to the back wheel, so it's really imperative that this piece of kit is maintained to a good standard. A rusty chain is more likely to break, which can consequently lead to an accident. The tension of the chain is also important, so that should be checked on a regular basis. And again, there are plenty of videos available on YouTube to show you how to change the tension, or if you're not 100% confident in doing this, is take it down to your local mechanic where they'll be able to do it within a few minutes, and check the chain, of course. And finally, go out and enjoy it. It's great fun. You'll never look back. The more you ride, the more confident you'll get, and the more you'll want to ride. But you'll never stop learning. And I sometimes find myself in a car park after a ride, just practicing tight turning, for example, or figures of eight. Biking has taken me to some stunning locations over the years, and I'm convinced that I would never have visited these locations in a car. I hope you've enjoyed this journey with me, and until the next time, bye for now.